All right, thank you, everyone. Welcome back. We're in the committee room for the continuation of tonight's village council meeting. In particular, we have recess. We don't need a motion to come out of recess.
And move to come out of recess.
Thank you.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
I'm just glad it was a recess.
We're very process-driven here. Thank you. We're back in session to pick up where we left off with respect to our discussion of the long-range plan. This is meeting number 4 on the topic, and more to come, particularly as we go into the budget. The long-range planning discussions are what help drive the preparation of the budget and then ultimately the work plan for the coming year in particular. Tonight's focus is on council priority action items, review, and prioritization. I will turn this over to Manager Fieldman to explain the chart that we have before us tonight and how we're going to proceed.
Thank you, Mayor. As the Mayor said, we are in the process of really the first step, or second step, if you will, in determining the council's priority action items that the village will be focusing on for the next 2 years or so, the balance that this council and its current makeup will serve this community. As we create these council priority action items, I think it's important for everybody to keep in mind the goals that we have established there, the 5 goals up here on the whiteboard. They have been the same or similar goals for many years. And the reason I mention that is in addition to council priority action items, which are exactly that, the action items that the council would like us to work on, each and every department head here at the village is asked to, in their own departments, in their own ways, further the goals of the village as established by the council. So in addition to the council priority action items that may be accomplished in any given year, there are several other items driven by staff in support of the village goals that we do accomplish, and those show up every year in our annual reports. So obviously council-initiated priority actions are of utmost importance, and we focus on getting those done as our priority. But there are other items that we work on too. And I say that because if there's an item that does not make the cut as far as top or high priority from the council, it doesn't necessarily mean that we won't be doing things in support of it. So keep that in mind as we go through the process. Our very first meeting back on June 2nd, we had a council roundtable discussion. Was open to any topic that each individual council member wanted to raise. And during that roundtable, the council as a whole identified 27 potential priority action items. Those 27 potential priority action items are found in a report that's published on the village website, and if you're here in the room with us tonight, is over here by the chair. As you come in, they're indicated in the last 2 pages of that report is where you can find those 27 priority action items. Again, these were identified by council members. We've created a 5-step prioritization process to do just that, to put these 27 potential action items into some sort of hierarchy or priority order. The first step was to review the list of potential priority action items, which has been circulated for several days now, and I know based on conversations with each council member has thoroughly reviewed the list of potential items. The second step is to identify any additional actions that the council would like us to consider before we go into the actual prioritization. Based on individual discussions with council members Monday morning, I do not suspect that we have any additional items for consideration. At this point, I will pause just to confirm that. And that brings us to our exercise. What we're going to ask the council to do is, working from those last 2 pages of the report, is identify 6 top priority and 6 high priority action items. So if you're a council member filling out the sheets, and let me know if anybody needs a fresh sheet here, you will simply mark 6 of them with a T and 6 of them with an H. And then what will happen is staff will go back and tally those results, and we will put up on the whiteboard a draft prioritization. That won't be the final prioritization, but based on the draft that gets presented here from the exercise, we'll turn it back over to the council for further discussion and debate. And that brings us, that is step 4, that review and discussion. And then hopefully step 5, that we'll get direction tonight on what the priority action items are, both top and high, as they should be presented in a council report. that will be presented to the council in September. So this is not the end-all, be-all, final decision of the council priorities. It only tells us how they will appear in the report that will be presented to the council in September. And at that point, those will become the list of priorities. And of course, those are re-looked at quarterly as part of our quarterly reports. So with that, I would now ask the council to take a few minutes to take the list and identify 6 top priorities and 6 high priorities of the list of 27.
Dave, can I get a clean sheet, please?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I'll
one,
chicken
two.
scratch.
Just pass it around. Don't want to turn that over to Lando, right?
Oops. Don't worry about it. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Dave. Couple things. First, one, I think it might be helpful for discussion purposes if everybody, while you're going through these, will also number them. If I counted correctly, there's 27,
Correct.
so that when we refer to them, we don't have to read the full description. So I've just gone ahead and done that. It might be helpful if everybody quickly did that for purposes of reference. Second, I know that there were some questions about combining some of these, and I know that there was an explanation as to why combining review of the zoning perimeter of the downtown, the comprehensive plan, and the zoning map would not necessarily be something you would combine.
Correct. There's a couple of projects that are highly interrelated. Comprehensive plan update to the zoning map, and then a more specific project of relooking at the zoning and zoning map of the area around the perimeter of the downtown. While those are very much interrelated, they actually have a different scope. In other words, let's take, for example, the downtown area project. The scope of that project includes both potential rezonings or a change to the zoning map, but also the zoning categories, the downtown business district and the downtown transition district. That is a much deeper scope than just looking at the zoning of the properties throughout the entire village. The reason we don't necessarily recommend combining those into one action item is then staff would not have the benefit of understanding which of those actually takes priority. Comprehensive plan update, the rezoning issues in the downtown, or the zoning map. And left to our own devices, we would put them in a specific order. Update the comprehensive plan, then relook at the entire zoning map, and then relook at the downtown. And that may or may not reflect the direction of this council. So we would appreciate having the benefit of the prioritization separately.
Okay, understood and appreciated. There was another grouping that, at least to me, one person's opinion, jumped out as a candidate for combination, and let me explain what I have in mind, and if nobody agrees, then we can move on. Creating an economic development plan to enhance the sales tax base, or what I numbered as number 8. Responding to state revenue restrictions, potentially adopting new revenue sources, which I've numbered as number 19. And the next one, achieving independence from Springfield, which, of course, achieving independence from Springfield does not mean we're seceding from the state of Illinois, but what it means is being less financially reliant upon the state and their whims in terms of revenue decisions that affect municipalities. I would just raise the possibility of whether it makes sense to combine all those, because it would strike me that a more comprehensive approach to our financial situation would include elements of all those. But it may suffer from the same problem as the other one, but I want to at least raise it.
I agree 100%. I'd just like to throw in the protecting the AAA bond rating, because I think they are all interrelated.
Well, on that note, I would agree with that, because actually I was going to suggest, my next suggestion is that there are 2 on here that I think we are committed to all the time. And one would be protecting the bond rating whenever we can. It isn't an independent goal. It's something that we use as a guiding principle in decisions that we make with that in mind. I agree with you 100%. So we can either roll it in or remove it from the list. I think it's something that we do all the time, or try to do all the time. The other one, just as long as we're on the subject, is engaging residents in developing community buy-in. I know that sounds like a great goal, but again, that's something that is a guiding principle that in everything we do, we try to do that. And so I don't know, but that's more of a aspiration or a goal than it is a specific project.
I think we've said in the past it's part of our DNA.
Well, right, so I don't know if, I mean, we're all going to rank that high because it's very important.
Well, that's why I called your attention back to the goals, and if you think there's something that's already in our DNA because it's a long-standing goal, then I would suggest not ranking it as a top or high priority. And the ones that you rank, there's some on the list that are clearly projects. very easily discernible in terms of scope and timeline and deliverable. There's some that are not. The ones that aren't fitting so well into projects, maybe you don't want to prioritize those for these very reasons.
Yeah, to that point, just as an example, and they're right next to each other, we have engage residents and develop community buy-in. That's a goal or something we want to maintain or improve on, but it's not a specific task, whereas the next one that immediately follows, conduct resident survey, that's an example of a task that's designed to engage residents and develop community buy-in.
And if I could, Mayor, the proposed combination of many of those other things would suffer from staff not getting the benefit of prioritizing each of those things because the scope of that project of financial independence, increasing our sales tax revenue, and protecting the AAA bond rating, I can think off the top of my head, there are many, many tasks and strategies you would use if those were separated that would be mutually exclusive and contradictory, if you will. So we'd like, if possible, to have the benefit of prioritizing those as they stand, and if they sort of reach a level where it looks like they might make a list, or we might want to combine them later, I think that might be appropriate, but I think it would suffer from the staff perspective. We wouldn't be as clear in the direction if those were combined.
Mayor, I would suggest...
I'm just trying to get more choices
I
for
would-
myself, that's what I'm trying
I
to do.
would suggest that we go through this exercise, get through it, and then have a discussion.
Actually, I see a flaw with the process. When we did strategic planning with District 99, we identified what were strategic issues and what were not strategic issues. And strategic issues require a choice be made. Nobody's going to oppose defending the AAA bond rating. That's not a strategic issue. We are elected to make decisions, and therefore we need to frame issues on which we can make decisions. We need to distinguish between strategic issues and just things that are goals we want to accomplish. And of course we want to protect the AAA bond rating, but that's something where you have to do that in the context of accomplishing your other goals. And so the point is that some of these things really aren't strategic goals. They're just things that, yes, it'd be good to do, but no one disagrees. There's no disagreement on that, and that's just understood. And to say it's in your DNA is one way to say it, but I think it's an inexact way of saying it.
Let's engage in the exercise, and then we can have more discussion.
Alrighty then, let's do it. Here's some game show music that can play in the background while everyone fills this out. Well, for those who are ready, I now have to unbundle some of mine, so please, someone else go first.
Are we supposed to put our name?
Please don't put your name on them.
It's like,
Too late, it's foilable now.
it's anonymous.
Get my hand ready.
Oh, jeez. Now I gotta convert. Everybody go out and have a drink while I
All right.
renumber.
Sorry, my name's on it.
That's also fine, Mayor, thank you.
Full transparency there.
We're coded. That's pretty exciting.
Yeah, we're gonna need a key for this one.
I think the accounting firm at Grant Thornton is going to be tabulating the results while we're there.
Baker and Deitch, I think, is the accounting
Baker and
firm that's
Deitch.
looking at it.
Tag team.
It's got a good name to it. Sure you don't want to retell the joke from the Lions Club one?
Teacher, can I have an extension on my report?
Take your time, Commissioner. Staff is busy entering in all the answers. And while we do that, Mayor, perhaps a 5-minute recess or so would be in order, and allowing time for completion and staff tallying.
Move for a recess.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Recess. Ask Michelle to make sure the mics are turned off during the recess. Thank you.
Mayor?
If you could turn cameras and mics back on, we'll be ready to go.
Where is Michelle?
In the booth,
In the booth.
up in the
This is
sky.
mysterious Michelle.
Air traffic control.
Hey, Dave, I need my papers back that way.
Okay.
See how
Just
easy it
saying.
is?
All right,
Move to return from recess.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we've returned from recess while our Vine Village staff is tabulating the results and putting them on the board. We'll take this pause to take any public comment at this stage. Understanding you haven't seen the results yet, but just out of respect for everyone sitting here waiting patiently, any public comments at this time about long-range planning? Please. Then you don't have to stand up. You can just,
All right.
from your chair is fine. Just because I'm standing, you don't have to stand.
Okay, so I'm a resident of Downers Grove. I'm Lorraine Smully, and I live in Deer Creek. And so I read the long-term or long-range plan, and I'm happy to see that stormwater management is part of it. I've also went to the FEMA MAP meetings a couple months or about a month ago. And looking at all the maps, realizing that Deer Creek, we have a life safety issue because there's only 2 entrances in and out of our neighborhood, and they would be flooded. And so if ambulances or fire trucks tried to get in and out, they wouldn't be able to. You know, if there was an emergency with a neighbor, they would be in trouble. There's no exit strategy. So I guess I would ask you to consider not only the flooding issues, but this being a life safety issue, it should be a priority. As I look at the situation in Deer Creek, I see that there's 2 issues. And one has to do with Westmont. And I see that in the long-range plan, working with other neighborhoods and villages and units, government agencies is on your list, and I'm happy to see that because with Westmont, if you walked the retention area between Westmont and Deer Creek, it slopes upward. And if you know anything about water, and I've learned more and more over the years that I've lived there for 24 years, water doesn't go up. So retention area does not work for Deer Creek on the Westmont side because water will not go up, it goes into our neighborhood. So we'd like to work with Westmont, but we need your assistance to do that. I don't think this would be expensive to change the slope of that retention area. There's also a bottleneck, which causes, again, the water to come into our neighborhood versus going west as the water should go, and then get out of our neighborhood. Another issue is the retention area. When I moved into the neighborhood, I thought it was such a quaint little creek. But I have since learned that it becomes a raging river, and it was coming right into our house and many homes in the neighborhood. And I think it's a simple fix that we dredge that, because there's vegetation that's growing in that drainage area. It's causing silt, and so it keeps getting shallower and shallower over the years. So it can't hold as much water, so it's coming into private property and homes. So I would like to see the village dredge that and maintain it, because as we spoke with DuPage County officials, there's an ordinance. Villages are supposed to take care of drainage areas. So we're not seeing it happening in our neighborhood, and I don't think that's a huge expense. In fact, you know, as I see the priorities, you're talking about bigger ticket items. I'm not asking for much, I'm asking for annual maintenance of a drainage area. And I'm also asking for working with Westmont. I don't think that a high-cost item either to just straighten out that retention area. So, thank you for your time.
Oh, thank you for sharing that, Lorraine. And thanks for your patience.
Yeah.
Other questions or comments from those who are here at this juncture? Sure, John?
Stormwater utility. I discussed this with the mayor a little while ago. It's something that's established. I was never in favor of it. I'm really not in favor of it now. But we have a constant source of revenue. And I would think that it should be maintained for some months into the future. If you're going to need more revenue and you're putting on real estate taxes, it might balance out to keep both in revenue streams. We could designate stormwater utility money to take care of certain functions. And whatever you put on real estate taxes, that would be used for other functions, just a suggestion. I'm sure that there's good ideas that can be worked on here.
Thank you, appreciate that, and I appreciate the conversation earlier tonight, and thanks for sharing with everyone else. We'll see where we go with that. Are we ready? All right, well, go ahead, please.
Regarding stormwater, I took some notes from the last meeting where I didn't get to speak because I left early, but I think that part of our problem, and you alluded to that earlier about maintaining, it seems to me is every time I hear the village talk or the council talk, you're talking about new projects, and my problem is that I don't think we're maintaining what we have. Instead of discussing huge projects like pie-in-the-sky ideas, we should be appropriately maintaining our current storm sewers. And I think that's been mentioned in the past, that we don't have enough funds for maintaining our current storm sewers, so why are we going on and doing new projects? Compounding the problem is the lot splits and the tear downs that we're still approving because we're dividing lots and we're displacing more water, which everybody downstream gets impacted by that. And then we come along and say, well, we need to raise the taxes more because we don't have money to take care of it. Well, we're allowing these more developments to occur, and because we want property tax, and we should be grandfathering the lots that are double lots before the house gets torn down, instead of, splitting. I mean, just take a look at Webster. You're just wrecking, the whole character of the street has changed because of the new houses there's hardly any room in between the homes to walk between. On Webster, Washington, and Lyman, you're starting there too. And those are all the streets that are affecting St. Joe's Creek flooding, which now we're paying money to buy properties along St. Joe's Creek on Webster. I understand you've gotten FEMA money, which is our money, to buy 3 lots right down there at the bridge. And they're not going to be property tax income there. You're taking the houses out, and you're just going to have the lots there. So, I mean, I don't know how that's going to mitigate stormwater problems when uphill you're splitting lots and putting big mansions on the lots. And you should be also maintaining the current sidewalks instead of trying to force neighborhoods to put concrete on their lots because they don't want them. And I've seen time and time again in the past years, and then just lately, somehow we set precedent in Clyde Estates. Heaven forbid that should come back upon us. But, it should be considering the neighbors and the community before you impose a development, especially when it's going to displace more water like concrete does. That's enough for now.
Thank you. Appreciate the comments so far. Let's pause there. We'll come back to an opportunity for public comment later, but as long as we have the results off, why don't we continue with that discussion?
Thank you, Mayor Tully. We're now in step 4 of trying to determine our council priorities, which is a review and discussion of the results of the exercise. And so, based on only the sheets being filled out, here's how staff interpreted those results. Under top priorities would be project number 1, update the facility sustainability plan, with all 7 of you identifying that as a top priority. So I think we've interpreted that one correctly.
We actually all agree on something.
Just wait.
I just wanted to soak that one in for a minute, okay?
Appreciate what we got.
All right? Folks, soak that one in for a minute, all right.
Also on the list, project number 2, consider changes to the storm water utility with 5 top and 0 highs. Project number 4, consider changes around the downtown perimeter zoning, those issues. Also a top priority, project number 5, update the comprehensive plan with 3 tops and 4 highs. Top priority is project number 8. This is the work with the EDC to create a plan to increase our sales tax revenue with 4 top and 1 high. And project number 25, which I don't think I have the wording quite right here, but this is the idea of pursuing one major consolidation initiative or project with 4 top votes. On the high priority side, and you can see it gets a little fuzzy between what's at the low end of the top and the high end of the high. It doesn't really matter all that much.
What was the weighting system?
There is no, it's whatever we wrote on the board. Project number 6, update the sign ordinance with 1 top vote and 4 high priority items. Project number 16, pursue intergovernmental partnerships for the provision of human services. 1 top and 4 highs. Project number 7, update village-wide the zoning map. 0 tops, 5 highs. Project number 3, consider amendments to the historic preservation ordinance. 3 tops and 1 high. It's interesting to note that we are already on meeting number 2 out of 6 on this project. This one is ongoing. I'm glad to see that it's still a priority of the village council. And then at the end here of our high priority, based on staff's interpretation, is project number 13, review our building permit and inspection process and all the things that go with it, including building codes, with 1 top vote and 3 high. Now, this is where we started getting not so much clear direction on what should make the list, so I actually put a question mark. And really what we should do here, I think, is just keep both of these on the list, frankly. And those are complete a resident survey and consider to work on identifying business-friendly measurements and metrics to assess how business-friendly our practices, regulations, procedures are. So really what we can do is just not limit this. We will add 1 more, Mayor. I'll throw that out there. Let's just say that this is the interpretation of 13 top and high priority projects. With that, I'll turn it over to you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Well, that was useful. A good way to collect everyone's views and get them all presented so we can see where we're at. Questions, comments, people? Yes, go ahead.
Could I comment? I'm very pleased we went through this process. I think it's interesting. I know it's the first time we've used this sort of process. So I appreciate the innovativeness of staff to bring forward new and different ways to go through this process. I'm pleased with the list. I think the top, it seems clear to me that the top priority items are, there's some general consensus that these are top priority items. So I really like where we're at and where we've gotten to with this process. So I just, before we get into too much debate, I do want to thank Dave and Allison and Mike and everyone who was involved in the process for doing this quickly so we can get to this point and then maybe have a little bit of discussion here.
All right, with that introduction, comments, questions?
Just a very short one. Regardless of what you use to weight T versus H, the top 6 are clearly in the lead.
Yeah.
I mean, so there's absolutely no doubt as to what the top 6 are. You can use 1.1 for T and 0.9 for H, or 2 or 3. It doesn't matter.
Right.
Those 6 are in the lead, clearly. So I think I would consider that settled.
Okay.
And thank you for playing.
And I have no problem going from 12 to 13. We consider that settled too.
I've got nothing to add, I think.
Any other comments, questions?
Still it'd be 20, not 12. You kind of knew that was coming. You know, it's really obviously the process leads to some clarity as things rise to the top. The question that I have is less, not about that at all, because it says it's crystal clear. But I don't think the list is long enough. I've had that issue for some time now, because I think our residents expect more. And I think that as the year goes on, things come up and they get, you know, pushed aside or pushed forward, because things will come up too. So even if we have 6, there'll be something that comes up that causes 1 to 6 to end up sliding a little bit. And it's that capacity to do more that is what I think is a bigger issue than this. I think this list, you could have taken this group, could have taken the last group, could have taken the next group. It's probably pretty similar to top 6. Even this set of choices, it's going to be hard to disagree with that top 6.
Because Commissioner Barnett has been saying that year after year, we did anticipate this as an issue. So what I think we'd like to add to the process this year is, as part of our quarterly reports, we'll provide an update on exactly where we are in each and every one of these projects. And if we get to the point where we've gone faster or done more or can do more or something changes, we'll leave everything else on the list as medium priority. And then at the right time, if we have capacity to do more, we'll prioritize those and work to put more on the board. It's my hope that we can accomplish all this list and more. We'll see. What ends up usually happening is things change and other items become priorities, and we do get through 10 to 12 in this time frame. So I hope we can do both of that. But we did add that to the proposed process, a quarterly review, and we'll reprioritize other projects as these come off the list if we have capacity.
I'm just kind of disappointed that we went with 6 as well. How did we arrive at 6? And some of them are naturally compatible with one another and require different resources. So, like I told Dave over the phone, you can have your top 6 priorities, and if it's all infrastructure related, NAM's going to have a heck of a year. But in the meantime, if you don't do, let's say, an ethics ordinance or something like that, then maybe the village attorney has a little less to do. Judy Budney has something to do, you know. I mean, depending on how your priorities are, some people are going to be very busy, and some people will just kind of continue on and not be part. So what I would like to see is not only the results of the voting, but I'd like somewhere along the line, you know, not right away, but, you know, a month or 2 or whatever, that we assign resources, you know, just like you do on an Outlook task type of thing. Who's in charge of the project? How many people are devoted to it? Which group? And like you say, is it a PERT chart? Okay, and have that laid out so that, you know, the pain is, you know, we aren't dumping everything on one group and letting another.
Couple thoughts on that.
That's what we pay the manager big bucks to do.
So what we'll do is, in the report that comes to you in September, it actually comes with exactly that. We produce a more detailed explanation of scope, deliverables, timeline, 1-page summary of each and every one of these, and then we put it in a Gantt chart that shows, you know, the time, quarters across the top, and you'll see the bar when we plan to start them, when we plan to complete them, etc. We post this on our website too. If you look on our website now, you can see this same process for the existing projects for the last council. The timing of this is perfect because the very next thing we do, right after this report is submitted to council with that information, is we go into the annual budget. And so some of these projects, we may not have the staff capacity to do each of these things. And if we don't, we will propose outside help and the resources required to get outside help. For example, a couple budgets ago, we had identified updating our zoning ordinance as a top priority. While we have qualified people on staff to do it, they were busy doing other things. So we augmented our staff with a consulting firm to accomplish that, and that went through the budget process. So I think, to Commissioner Waldeck's point, we will have a description, resources, discussion, timing discussion, all starting in the next 30 days and continuing through the budget process, which is why we set up this long-range planning process at this time.
Right, and let's be clear, we understand that there's a whole list of projects that aren't up on the board right now that are identified as things that if we can get them done, we should get them done. But nomenclature is interesting. We don't have high, medium, and low priority actions. We have medium, high, and top, because nothing is a low priority action item. And not everyone gets what they want. Certainly, there are things that I think belong on that board that are in the medium list, but that's why we have 7 people. We're all taking our priorities and blending them together, and Bob doesn't get what he wants, I don't get what I want, Bill doesn't get what he wants. We'll begin as a reflection of the diversity amongst the council, which is a reflection of the diversity in the community.
The other thing I'd like to add, in looking at this list, this is a listing, 13 projects. Most of these projects are extremely large in scope, broad, and requiring extensive amounts of community engagement. In fact, just by thinking back to priority lists in years past, there are very few on here that are sort of small tasks, which is great. Our list should be this. But I think as we go through them and we assign the resources and the timeline, I think you'll see how mammoth the scope is on most of these projects.
Right, and obviously, as was mentioned, but it's worth repeating, there are other things that are going on all the time that aren't on this list because we have no choice but to do them.
Yes.
Collective bargaining agreements, there are other things that we just have to do and they get done, but because they're chronic high priority action items, which I guess that's above top, is chronic. They're also not on the board.
Also,
Hopefully there was no storm damage tonight, or...
Well, to Bill's point, everybody's point, all we need is something like that to happen, and then everything gets pushed down.
Also, if we end up literally with resources that don't have a project, which I doubt will ever happen, but if we do, we will review the medium priority list, try to assign out those medium priorities, and let you know where we are in that. And if we need to have another policy discussion, we will. But in looking at each of these things, almost every department is represented quite well. There are police and fire participation in facility planning, downtown zoning, comprehensive plan, major consolidation projects. So if you look at this, there's an obvious lead department in each of these, but most of these have far-reaching implications, and we do work in a team.
Sure, and I'll take that one step further, because there are some of the items up there on the high and top priority list that actually, if successful, and depending on where they land, could free up resources to do some additional things or do things differently, have an impact on service levels. One major consolidation project being an example, increased sales tax plan being another. There's another thing, there's a number of things that lend themselves to maybe achieving some other goals, including getting other projects done.
We offer a possible synergy. One that didn't make the list, but I think it could easily be included, the super retreat, number 17. If one of those was held within the comprehensive plan process, that might be a way to fuel the comprehensive. There could be some good synergy there.
Well, that was one of my ones that's lurking in the medium. Even I ranked it medium because there's other things that are more
It could be a
important.
subset of, the consultant in the comprehensive plan could host a super retreat as part of the process of developing it.
It would be a little bit more focused than just like wide-ranging discussion, but it would be focused on.
Also, we might identify a consolidation project, which is why we like the opportunity to kind of digest this and figure out if we can add some things for further discussions.
Can I clarify one on number 8? How it's written up there, increased sales tax plan, that sounds like we're going to increase the sales tax. That is not, that is not, let me be clear, that is not. The item is an economic development plan to increase the sales tax base
And
being the key.
Yeah.
With it suggests that we're not raising rates to accomplish that. It's the opposite of that.
Right.
Yeah.
Suggest we're going to develop a plan and not know the answer to that tonight.
Correct.
That's a suggestion.
Okay, now it looks like you want to increase the sales tax revenues.
Right.
Yeah.
What does that usually mean when they're talking about that in Springfield?
Half
increasing tax revenue.
Well, Mark, I just direct you, Mark, I just direct you to this. Create economic development plan to enhance sales tax base. So it's about economic development plan. So I just mentioned the document. What do you say it is?
I'm good.
See, we're flexible.
Fill stores with retailers.
Well, this has been, from the staff perspective, extremely helpful and would allow us, all the way through step 5, to prepare a complete long-range plan report for council consideration in September.
Thank you. Any other comments from council? Anything else you need from us?
No, sir, thank you.
Questions back to the public? Any additional questions, comments?
Yeah,
Sure.
one question. To refresh my memory, have we completed all the action items on the previous list? It's in the website somewhere.
There were a couple that were not completed. Facilities
Facilities plan being the first one.
Right-of-way standards was a medium priority in the last one. We didn't even start that one. But for the most part, we got through almost all of them. And we did things that became higher priority.
Well, and the comprehensive plan was done 5 years ago, but now it's back for being revisited.
No, I'm talking about the
Right.
process. I hear all the projects that we're going to do, like you said, there's a couple that didn't get done in that process.
Correct.
And there is the flexibility, or my policy, to, at the appropriate time, if it comes that way, and drop one of those, move it. And that was a bone of contention the last time around.
I'll answer that. I think history shows that when circumstances warrant and with the consensus of the council, direction can be changed to some degree, but usually there would have to be some new set of circumstances.
As I recall the previous discussions, there was no flexibility, and once you had a list, that was it. Staff would work on it, finish them all, couldn't bring in a new one.
I wouldn't go that far. I would say that generally we try to stick
I talked
to,
about that in one meeting, as I heard this, but
yeah, I think generally we try to stick to the plan because that's the purpose of the exercise, but if there was a new set of circumstances, I don't think anybody's so rigid that we're going to do it no matter what.
On the goal 1 there, the steward of financial and environmental sustainability, what is the environmental sustainability referring to?
It means that we need to, as we make policy decisions and operational decisions, that we should keep in mind the impact on the environment, look for long-term sustainable solutions. It drives some of our decisions in our village vehicle fleet for alternative fuel vehicles, green vehicles. It drives decisions like directing staff to look at recycling in the downtown, those types of things.
How do you measure whether it's sustainable or not?
We actually have a sustainability report that was done several years ago that speaks to the metrics around how we measure sustainability impacts. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but we can dig that up.
Well, I guess part of the reason I ask is given the tendency to tear down and put up bigger houses, for example, I'm not quite sure how that meshes with the idea of stewarding environmental sustainability.
That goes more to steward of community and neighborhood sustainability. That would be the character of a neighborhood. That goes back to, well, because if you're talking about residential redevelopment, it's not even necessarily tear down. It could be an existing home, somebody just adds to it. That's changing the footprint of the home. That goes back to issues regarding building codes and whatnot.
I think the point might be tearing down a house and dumping it in the landfill is not good for the environment.
Oh, okay. Sure, I misunderstood.
So what's the answer to the question? If you're putting up bigger houses,
Right.
filling up more space,
Right.
what are you measuring against to determine that that's appropriate to this goal of environmental sustainability?
Well, that one gets complicated because now you're dealing with private property rights. And whether someone can add onto their home or add a deck or a porch or do a tear down, we obviously have, a number of years ago, did a number of changes to our code with respect to residential redevelopment. Most of those changes were done shortly before the recession. A lot of that was designed to have a better impact upon the neighborhood in a number of different ways, setbacks, FAR, stormwater, notification, neighborhood involvement. But fundamentally, if somebody has the right to build a home, they're building a home, and we don't say you can't build a house because...
Well, I asked in part because it struck me that some of the comments earlier broached that rather explicitly, that years ago, perhaps Deer Creek, that's however long it's been there now, we now discover it's in a place where there are regular flooding problems and that sort of thing. So that's why I'm asking, what, if anything, is being used to actually ascertain what's environmentally sustainable?
Other than the report the manager mentioned, that's the only thing that I think presently comes to mind.
So private property rights trump environmental sustainability at present?
No.
No.
We've made, as the mayor was alluding to, there aren't necessarily probably the metrics that you're looking for, I suspect. But what we've done by having that as a goal, and that's been a goal, that list has been 5, more than that probably, is it's sort of maybe a boundary or a guide for various topics that come up to be something that we're thinking of. So when we do a building code, like the mayor was talking about, we change, because of our goals is environmental sustainability, we do change what setback requirements are we increasing. We do give credits for certain design styles that cause us to end up with more green space. Just last fall, we made a change to our stormwater requirements on residential development to try and further that.
That all sounds pretty loosey-goosey, though. I mean,
It's code, I mean, it's as loose as code gets. It's as loose as code gets, it's specific, measurable requirements in terms of runoff and FAR and things like that.
Well, but let me take a hypothetical. We've been playing around in the world for, 25-plus years now with respect to carbon dioxide emissions. You could apply such a specific measure. That's, I guess, partly why I'm asking the question. If you're actually going to claim that you're striving for environmental sustainability, presumably there's some means to actually measure it and some basis against which to make actual judgments.
That would be another probably thing for the list, but right now it's more, as Bob said, it's to be mindful of that when we take other steps. But to have a set of metrics necessarily that encompass everything that you have in mind, no, you're right. I wouldn't say that we have that.
I think those are the very things in that report that we'll share with them. It's on the website.
Well, I'm not saying that it exists now, but I guess part of the reason for bringing it up is that, as we've seen with the world, with the United States, we'd like it, but, well, it doesn't fit our lifestyle, so we'll pretend that we've got plenty of time to work on it later. So, thank you.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? Please.
Ideas that you have for number 25. I mean, obviously you had the 911 that got consolidated, but there's 2 parties to that, or at least 2 parties, maybe 3, and you start looking at, oh, you might want it, but they don't want it, and are we spinning our wheels that it's such a top priority? So maybe there's some things you have in mind already that, yeah, we can get this done quickly.
Yeah, there's a couple of things that jump out at us, that now that this has been identified specifically as a top priority, the first step will be to generate a list of potential items and then go out and seek those partners. So we have some ideas of where there's opportunities, but you're right, Todd, it takes 2 to tango on all these. It takes political will, it takes philosophical alignment, and we'll look towards that.
That's absolutely correct. But that being said, today, more than ever, there's a lot of pressure on a lot of units of government to explore that. So we're not the only ones out there that have that priority on our list. And we're just looking.
I'm not saying
we're looking for a dance partner.
We're talking about allocation of resources, and if it's going to be something that's more challenging, I'm not saying don't do it. But if we got other things that could take the place of that, maybe that's an alternative.
Sure, and likewise, if we have some in mind and they play out, that could be very beneficial. But if the report back is, here's 6 that make sense, but now's not the right time, you betcha. That's an example of where circumstances might change and something else could get more attention. But we don't know that yet.
There's a little bit of confirmation aspect of this too. Our staff and the mayor and others, I think, within DMC have been pursuing a variety of things. There's probably a dozen that are kind of floating around the table. And so part of what this exercise also does is confirms for our staff that, yeah, keep pulling that string. Dedicate the resources to keep trying to figure out if those we could say pull off. We've got 4 other things we'd rather have you do. So I think part of my input on this as we go through this exercise is to say that yeah, you can't just say we're gonna do one, because of all the obvious reasons you stated. But we do want to invest the time and energy to continue to bring them up, pursue them, ask the right people whether they can participate, look for ways to make it work.
Well, thank you, everyone, for your patience and for weathering the storm, no pun intended, and joining us here for the last meeting on long-range planning. I think we're ready to wrap up, and we do need a...
Move to adjourn.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? We adjourn. Thank you again, and good night. Appreciate all the comments.